the ultimate. Can't fuck with it. The ultimate.
This is Constant Elevation, the show for rising military and community leaders that isn't waiting for the future, we are defining the future. I'm your host, Gabriel Gabe Rockavilla, and you already know, can't stop, won't stop.
The ultimate.
3, 2, 1. What is up, everybody? Gabe Rock back on the mic once again. You are watching to the Constant Elevation podcast. If you're listening to this on this Sunday, we are finally in October. And what that finally means is I'm allowed to set foot into Spirit Halloween stores. I have a strict family. Well, I'm the only one in my family that actually abides by this rule. I don't go into Halloween stuff. I don't even acknowledge Halloween stuff until October 1st. My daughter, her friends, other people, y'all are too early with some of these Halloween things. Don't be buying Halloween candy because they're at Safeway or Wegmans. It's too early. Just get regular candy until October 1st. Then you can go into the store. So if you feel a different way, it is what it is. You're wrong. Not really, but I'm just saying, me personally, I have certain standards. I'm looking forward to October and all the spoopy season that comes along with it. So that being said, this week, I'm very, very excited. Last week's episode, I talked about my debrief of the AFA Airspace and Cyber Conference, and I talked about how I met some new and old friends. And so this week, I'm very, very proud to introduce a new friend that I met, and we have been virtually sort of connected based on, we'll talk about our connections together on the internets, but I finally got to meet him. So I want to please welcome Lt Col Dear Beloved to the show. DB, welcome to Constant Elevation.
Hi, Gabriel. Thanks for having me on the show. It was great to meet you as well at the AFA Aerospace and Cyber Conference. And,
yeah, dude.
Really appreciate all the shared knowledge you're putting out there on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's definitely a famous, infamous kind of thing that I do. Our connection was a shout out to Josh Hawkins, who virtually connected us. Josh was like, "Hey, man, you need to talk to DB. He's somewhere on the floor taking 200 pictures." I was like, "Okay, cool." And then I met you. I was busy doing one of the cyber conferences at the end of it. And then I was like, I just want to make sure I caught you on the floor. I don't want to be in between pictures. He's like, you're like, I'm not taking that many pictures. I was like, aren't you though? You kind of are. It's good. It's there are people, obviously your career path has led you to meet a lot of good airmen and guardians. And so that conference ends up being a really good connection point for everybody involved who has the opportunity to attend.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. Great networking and reconnecting opportunity, great professional development, and just awesome to see so many good leaders there. And I was thankful to run into you as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that was our physically meeting each other. But we've traversed kind of in sharing thoughts in different kind of spaces online, and the primary one that I want to talk about this week is, so both of us are members of the Minority Air Force Officer page. And so on Facebook. So a lot of mentorship goes on in there. You have all the various ranks, right? You have it from, brand new accession lieutenants to old dudes like me and you to older dudes above us as far as the GOFOs. But as much as we can, we try and drop knowledge and from very different angles. And you definitely have also been dropping knowledge as far as different angles. And I've been paying attention because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the different thought processes that you have, different kind of conversations, because you're not necessarily giving answers per se. You're giving things for us, me included, to think about. And so what I want to talk about this week is you were talking about, you actually referenced an Air Force handbook, and it talks about the 4 ships of leadership. And so what I want to do is kind of peer into your mind as far as your extended thoughts, because you posted something and it generated a lot of conversation, but I figured this method is going to be a little bit easier for people to ingest. And then I want to hear some of your thoughts. So there was 4 ships of leadership. They included mentorship, relationship, sponsorship, and discipleship. So 4 of them. Okay. So what I'd like to do is just start off with the first one, mentorship. So what are your thoughts as far as one of the primary tools a leader needs to have? How important is mentorship to you?
Yeah. So just a quick disclaimer up front. Obviously the views expressed here are mine and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or EOP or any components. And so as you mentioned on mentorship, one thing I would say is, to start, these ships are really aspects of career progression. I wouldn't necessarily tie them all in directly with leadership. Leadership, we could have a whole separate conversation on.
Yep.
But mentorship is a critical aspect of leadership. And I think mentorship, of all the ships we're going to talk about, mentorship's the most important one. And it's the only one that I could find that's truly defined by the Air Force, and that's in Air Force Handbook 36-2643. And so a mentor, as defined there, the responsibility is to advise, coach, to facilitate, and to advocate for a mentee. And so we could go into detail on each one of those, but I think we all know what advise is, right? That's more, are you on the right track? Hey, can I share some experience, some of my knowledge with you to help you figure out how to reach your goals, your objectives, right? Coaching is more technical, it's more task oriented. So in order to coach, you already have to have that skill and be able to assess somebody's level, where they're at now and where they're going to go, and help them get there. Facilitating, when I first thought of facilitate, I said, oh yeah, that's like, the broker connection to facilitate somebody getting somewhere. But really, as the Air Force defines it, it's to provide resources for a mentee to close gaps in competency. So where they want to get to, we facilitate, maybe provide them some training resources or recommend a certain course online they can take, those kind of things. And then advocating is more so recommending, hey, this is a great opportunity, put your name in the hat, go for it, get some visibility, because that's going to help people get to know what your work is. Now, when we talk about mentorship, the mentee plays a critical role. So I think every leader is a mentor, and sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in group settings, right? The tempo and timing of that changes from day to day. But the mentee, I think, is the critical part of it, because the mentee has to commit. The mentee has to commit to personal growth, to development, and they have to commit to maintaining contact, because typically a mentor is busy, number one. They're also wary of being overbearing, right, in a mentee's life. And so the mentee kind of dictates the pace of that relationship. One of the nice things about mentorship is that it is independent. If it's done right, it's independent of personal bias and agenda, and it's just a free flow of information. So, and I have some stories to share if you want to hear them.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, definitely lots to pick apart there. So mentorship, out of the 4 ships that we talked about, I agree with you that this is the most foundational, most important one. I think it kind of comes down to also just one of the charges as far as you, especially you and I, as we'll call it senior officers in our respective career fields, we are responsible for raising the next generation. We're responsible for bringing the next man or woman up. We'd be like, yeah, so there's you and I'll say we have, another boss told me, and one of my other mentors told me this, we have less runway in front of us than behind us. Yeah, that's the right way to say it. So our responsibility, and I actually started kind of really feeling growing into this role. I'm like, no, I actually want to be a mentor and groom my replacements. Not kidding. Like I want to leave the Air Force better than I left it. I'm very cognizant that these CGOs on their come up have a different set of skill sets, a different kind of motivation, and they're just going to be better than me. And I love that. I love the fact that these airmen are going to be, and guardians, airmen for me and you in the Air Force, they're going to be just awesome, way better than, strides ahead of you and I. And that's exciting to me. And for whatever I can contribute to that as being a mentor, I'd like to do. So I could do the mentorship 101. I think part of that is where you are having those individual nuanced conversation with a person, and you're looking at them as their potential for a career in the Air Force. And so what are your skill sets, depending on your career field, what are the opportunities for you to rise in the Air Force, or even like, what are some of the larger needs of the Air Force? Maybe it's training, maybe it's recruiting, maybe it's something else of not your assigned AFSC, but something that someone can identify the talent in you, and therefore let's mentor you and make sure your talents are something that can be really, really leveraged within the Air Force to just make us a larger team, a better team, I should say. Coaching and facilitating is definitely, you can tell the difference between a good mentor who, at a tactical level, who's a squadron commander who is sort of just kind of talking to you about stuff, but not really engaging with you. And there's a clear, I've had some of those instances, and largely they're not like that, but I've seen some squadron commanders where they're just kind of disconnected. They'll be like, sir, ma'am, I'm at this critical point in my career where I'm trying to make some strides, or I'm really interested in doing this. And if you only get like barely boilerplate sort of responses, that's not really good mentor. You are repeating words that the Institute wants you to repeat, but that's not a mentorship kind of connection. And so like those kind of pieces, there's clear distinctions in my opinion of what a good mentor could be versus just a supervisor subordinate relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just touched on a whole lot of points there. And so when we talk about mentorship, like you said, it's really important to engage. And it's, for me, I think it's the most important thing of what I do now. Like the runway example is perfect because when I joined the Air Force, got my commission from the Academy, my goal was pretty simple, make it 20 years, hopefully achieve the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and Squadron Command. Well, I've done all that at this point, except the 20 years. 20 years is coming up next year, but I found myself now where this is the bonus round. Whatever happens, happens.
I like that. I like that. The bonus rounds.
Yes. And so whatever, for me, though, the one thing that never stops is mentoring. Whether I'm active duty or retired, I will continue mentoring. I consider that a lifetime responsibility because we do have to build the next generation. And the importance of an early start is really critical. My first 4 years, I don't think I had any mentoring in the military. And so when I first got my first mentorship, I remember it was in 06, he kicked his feet up on the desk and, I reported in, he took my records. We didn't even have any small talk, but he took my records and he looked at it and he started tossing paper and saying, oh, there's nothing here, nothing here. Oh, you got a little bit there. He said, you need to take more ownership. You need to write better and provide better inputs to your boss, or you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah, so I took that to heart.
Yeah, that seems, oh my God, it gives me not goosebumps, but like the heebie-jeebies. That's a gross. I don't like that kind of interaction. And part of it is because I think that's a transaction. I'm not kidding. That person was just going through the motions because, all right, here we go. I got to talk to these CGOs. I'm going to look over the records and give some they're giving minimal effort. I'm not kidding. That's minimal effort. So I think this is a good transition between, so mentorship, what we're talking about is how to give practical and engaging advice to from a superior to a subordinate, to be like, here's some things, and you don't have to be chain of command. I have lots of mentors where I moved on. I'm sure you're the same thing, where we moved on, yet we still have connections with these mentors. I have a small handful I can call or text or whatever it is at the drop of a hat, and they're going to be there. And because I'm an engaging mentee, I'm seeking out their advice. Sometimes it's for family stuff, I'm not kidding. Sometimes it's professional things, but they have earned my respect to where I want them to, I want to hear what they're going to say. They're not going to necessarily give me answers because that's not necessarily what a mentor's going to do, but they're going to give me some advice and give me some soundboarding, what I'm thinking about, maybe share some of the experiences, because they potentially the reason why I have a strong mentorship relationship with them is because we're kind of the same. And so I want to transition this over to relationship. I think this is the next one, the next important ship of these 4 ships. So I want to get your opinion on relationships.
Yeah, it's a perfect transition because I think a mentorship, as you mentioned, that was very transactional with my 06. And I never met him again. That was a one time.
Doesn't matter.
There's times the mentor doesn't even know they're mentoring in some cases.
Right.
And so, yeah, we have the full range of mentorship from transactional to a relationship. My longest running mentor, I met him when I was a first lieutenant, 2004, and I still receive mentorship today. And so, but I have many other mentors that were just one time, but I took something from them. Mm-hmm. And so a relationship is something for me that's a connection between 2 people that holds career enhancing potential. And what we mean by connection, it could be through sports, it could be a club that we're both a member of, maybe we meet in Toastmasters and we get along great, right? Or a fraternity. Fraternities are a huge one, quite frankly. And then church and school are the ways where you can have these shared connections through other things than work. And sometimes the relationship can form in work as well. But for me, the difference with a relationship is there's an aspect of trust there. And that trust is formed over time. It may start with just a mentoring session, and then it evolves into a relationship over time, for example. For me, the benefit of a relationship is that it provides access in a bureaucracy where I would not otherwise have it, right? We have this hierarchy, we have a chain of command, but sometimes we just need to, hey, what's going on with this? Or, hey, can you tell me why we do things this way? And you don't want to go through the chain of command for that. And so if you have a relationship built on trust, it's easy to figure out what's going on, to get unvarnished advice. And I think a relationship has to be secondary performance. we've heard of the good old boy system. And when you hear relationships, that may come to mind. Oh, the guy that's out on the golf course is the one that's getting promoted or getting special assignments. But really, if we do this right, we got to perform first. And in the context of performance, we do need relationships because we need a foundation of trust. We need a foundation of teamwork and these things. And so relationships are a natural evolution of that. So as long as the relationship doesn't come first and performance comes first, I think this is beneficial. And then I think it also stays within our moral and ethical bounds, which are really important for relationships. When relationships transcend what is considered to be moral and ethical, that's when we start to get into what I call the danger zone. And then we're no longer, in meritocracy. We're now starting to supplant a competitive process and bypass it. And when you do that, you're shortcutting the talent pool. So I remember meeting someone at a running club, and we ran, we did half marathon together, and then we did more and more. And I like getting out there and being active. And that built trust. And during that time, we were able to talk. And so now I'm able to call this person for unvarnished advice at any time. They don't help me in any way or shortcut any processes, but it allows me to get insight into other things. So that's a relationship. Another example of a relationship, I had a basketball teammate at the Air Force Academy. He ascended to be an 8 senior leader, right? And I was able to provide him input directly on some issues at hand years ago. And then those inputs fed into headquarters and spurred change. And so you never know how that relationship could be used for benefit.
Yeah, there's definitely so much. This is what happens where you and I, when we start talking, we're unleashing combos. Like you're like, oh, yeah, there's so much in there. So good. Relationships I like where you said relationships need to come second to mentorships. And I think there's an important piece that I heard that I completely agree with, where when people start thinking like, well, the good old boy network exists, that is a thing. But part of that is you don't earn entry to those kind of things without actually doing the work, right? And so I think I pride myself, and I'm sure you do as well, I want my work to stand above reproach. Whatever it is that I'm doing, it is beloved, it is Villa's freaking work, and his name is on it, and I want to own it, good or bad, indifferent, whatever it is. But I'm very particular to make sure I'm working hard to make sure that I'm earning anything I do. It's merit-based. If I earn something, it's because I earned it, not because of anything else. Those things are other maybe additional elements that are part of the game and part of the system. I'm aware of that, but not relying on that. I'm not relying on these relationships to help me become a successful officer, to kind of pad me against potential negative repercussions if I do something wrong or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter if I screw up because, such and such is going to take care of me because I have that relationship. That's not what we're talking about. The idea of, I like the idea of relationships is going to be, you gave examples of very physically demanding kind of things. And I'm a physically active dude like you. I'm a CrossFitter, I'm a weightlifter, I'm a runner. And so all those things, I immediately, if someone is going to be willing to put in the work and they have the discipline to have a physical fitness regimen, I don't care what it is. You don't have to be a CrossFitter. You could be a long distance runner. You could be a Zumba dude. You could be a hiker. There's something to appreciate of someone who is comfortable with being uncomfortable, comfortable with working through those physical kind of things, because those things start to open up your mind. And you're like, hey, so we're going for a hike, we're going for a run. And all of a sudden we start talking about something. We're like, oh, that's on your mind? Yeah, this is going on my mind. And potentially the other part of relationships that I like to really, how I form my relationships with people is I talk about things that are common to me. So what am I? I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a coach. I am a Air Force officer. I'm a minority. I'm a Filipino. I'm a local boy from Hawaii. I have so many things that I can potentially make a connection with somebody. And then that just makes it exponentially available for me to start a relationship. It's not everything's going to become a relationship, but I have lots of embers in the fire to be like, it could spark into something bigger. And so, I remember when I first had my kids, Colonel Ryan Vetter and his wife, Lisa, there was the first brand new baby. They're like, hey, we'll watch Lana. Like, what? Like, it's a brand new baby. I don't know what I'm doing. They're like, I know. You go have a movie night with Gina. We got Lana. We have 3 kids. We know what we're doing. Just enjoy. And they knew that I needed to do that. And Gina as new parents. And that's a reason why I have a relationship with Darth, shout out, that I trust him. I trust him as Lisa. It's someone he was a captain at the time. I was a lieutenant. He reached out to me, and I see him as a mentor because he sought out an actual relationship with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, it comes down to who knows your work, like you said, and sometimes relationships can help enhance who knows your work. Because sometimes you're out there working, you don't have any relationships. Nobody knows you're there. So I think that's awesome. And then to be able to have that shared understanding, that is how relationships get formed.
Yeah. It's just shared experiences, right? Like we in any given organization, we're the officer, we be a flight commander, a squadron commander, whatever it happened to be, but like we're still a person at that time. I mean, we're going through the same thing, like when school year starts, all of us are going through, when COVID was happening, all of us are being impacted. Guess what? Nobody cares about your rank. All of us are just going through the same family things. That's where you can have a potential to start those relationships because you have some kind of formative event, but it's because it's a shared experience. That's what's going to really hold the career throughout the whole thing, to where I can talk to people, even though we may not be talking about the original subject, our relationship has endured and we have that partnership. They're still either active duty or they've achieved and retired, stuff like that. I value their opinions as my mentors, and it's just that stronger of a bond that I have with that person as I continue in my personal career.
Yeah, you mentioned partnership. There's another ship right there.
Yeah. So let's see. Partnerships could be, I have another surprise ship I want to talk about. We're going to stay on brand here and make sure we go through the 4 in the handbook. So the next one is sponsorship. So give me your thoughts on sponsorship.
So sponsorship it goes a step farther, and sponsorship is one to me that requires power and influence to be done. And so that's different, right? A relationship and mentorship don't really require power or influence. You just need to find someone to connect with. This one, sponsorship, we're going beyond the realm of advice into the realm of action. So somebody in a senior position is going to sponsor you and say, I vouch for this person. They are the right person for this job, right? For example, I'd say command hiring, the way we do that in some ways could be sponsorship, because once you get on that list as a candidate, now you need people pushing your name. Maybe 06s emailing other 06s or general officers saying, hey, this guy, I know his work. I know him. He's going to help you take that squadron to the next level. That to me is a form of sponsorship. It can lead to action. It can lead to you being hired. It can lead to some kind of selection for a key position. So those recommendations carry weight. It can be a one-time situation. It can be a repeated situation, depends on the relationship, but it is zero sum in many ways because we're talking about key positions and there are only so many of those. There are only so many seats at the table. Right. So there is some risk involved for the sponsor, and that sponsor has to choose, and they're putting their name on you if they sponsor you. It's not always transparent or obvious. Sometimes it is. It really depends on the situation. And I would say it's a good thing if it's not overused, because we have a broad talent pool out there, and I don't know every officer in the Air Force. So even though I could sponsor someone, it doesn't mean they're the best person for the job. And so we need to be careful about not short-circuiting, tight selection processes to sponsor people. That needs to be something that's used selectively and in the right situation.
Yeah, I think within our respective communities, there's a high degree of sponsorship, and that's good, right? It's a thing of depending on what your background is. And so like in the cyber community, we have network op guys, offensive, defensive, and deployed combat comm kind of guys. So I am mainly a network ops guy and a defensive guy. I don't have a lot of sponsors I do, but I don't have somebody advocating because my experience is not built on offensive or deployed combat comm kind of stuff. So I don't have a strong sponsor in that, but I have some senior officers and even junior officers. I actually think that's a really cool idea when you can get some CGOs to be like, no, I know Colonel Villa. He's kind of goofy. He's handsome, but he actually knows what he's talking about. Like, I'll take all those sponsorships. I like the idea of where even if it's just kind of a small mention, it's a thing of, there's some social currency that understands my name and what I represent and how I carry and what I want to do as a leader in our community. So that's good. And then kind of going a little bit broader, that idea of you as I'll call it a lowercase general officer, Air Force officer. Leadership is leadership. And so that goes beyond your badge that you wear on your uniform. If people recognize you being a leader, you're going to start getting sponsorships from them. And I was very, very proud when I start getting some, other non-cyber enlisted, non-cyber officers where people were willing to co-sign, be like, no, Colonel Villa's he knows what he's talking about. He's a little bit eccentric, but he has his way of doing things. I took pride in those kind of comments because there was a sponsorship coming from them. It's kind of like there is a fine line, and it could be for just as minimal, value, or not value, but like minimal input, because it's just kind of a fleeting thought, but it's still a degree of sponsorship that can, consolidate, culminate towards a larger energy, a representation of your potential in the Air Force.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good conversation there. I think I cut out a little bit.
You're good.
Along the way, but hopefully I caught everything. You kind of went into fast speed up mode.
It's all good. But yeah, it's the idea of the sponsorship of coming from both angles. It not only is from your seat from the top levels, it's also coming from your peers as well as your supporting teammates. And so that degree of sponsorship of people being able to advance your social currency and being to advocate you and maybe hopefully champion, like, yeah, that guy or girl, I only know a little bit about him, or I know a lot about him, and they're going to be a right person for the job. That becomes, hopefully your characters coming through, and some of they understand some of the small details that you may or may not agree with, but as a whole, as a leader, they're going to sponsor you. They're going to give you that thumbs up. They're going to give you that check. They're like, yeah, this guy or girl's ready for the next level of responsibility, next level of rank, whatever that happens to be. And those are the kind of things that you want to, the best way to make, in my opinion anyway, you don't work to try and get sponsored. You just work. The sponsor stuff is going to take care of itself, right? And so the idea of
that's right.
The don't play the game to try and be the number one DG. Just do your job, do your studying, do your whatever it is, and the fruits of your labor are going to come out. And so that's going to be the best way that also people are going to understand it's the genuine version of you versus you trying to. You don't be a try hard, basically.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And I like to say, don't wait until you're in a position to make a difference. Make a difference wherever you're at. And when you do that, people know and they feel it because you're making a difference in other people's lives. And so that's what I do is I just try to make a difference one-on-one or whatever the situation presents, and what comes. If we wait, I think we lose that opportunity.
Yeah. You get good leaders don't wait for. So General Brown said that, right? He was like, good leaders, you're not going to get perfect conditions. You're never going to have all the money. You're never going to have all the manpower. You're never going to have all the time. Do what you need to do because this is what the Air Force needs of you right now. So I was like, yeah, let's go. I want to go to work right now. And so I was excited when he was saying stuff like that. So the fourth one I want to talk about, and this one is, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. So the fourth one is discipleship. So I'll let you start off and say, like, because that word has some very specific meanings for depending on who the audience is. So tell me your thoughts about discipleship.
Yeah, so discipleship, much like sponsorship, I think it requires power and influence. And I think it's rare, but when it's done, it is very impactful for the individuals involved. Of the ships that we talked about today, this one for me is the one that has the highest degree of risk because you're placing a lot of eggs in a basket over time. We're talking about a senior leader basically taking someone under their wings at a very young age in their career and then bringing them to very high levels. And that can extend over the course of 20 to 30 years in some of the examples I've heard off the record. And so, we don't want to talk about it here because disciples, the nature of a disciple and a teacher in a bureaucracy, that is not something that's typically obvious. It's something that happens. And because of the risk involved, I think it's just something that's not talked about a lot, but it is there. I've heard it from my mentors. So at least from my perspective, it's something I've heard of that's existed in the past. I don't have a lot of familiarity with it. I don't think I'm a disciple as far as I know. But I do think
I think like hopefully you would know if you're a disciple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's one though, you can get too big to fail. History is full of examples of disciples that got elevated to a certain level and then failed spectacularly, or they committed some immoral act, but it got swept under the rug because at that point there's too much invested. The vulnerabilities are there. The dependencies of the disciple and the teacher become greater over time, and that creates a huge pressure situation for that disciple to keep going. It increases the risk of coercion and potentially compellence to do things that may not be in the best interest of the organization. And then the organization starts to become tied to the fate of one individual potentially. So the other thing I would warn against is loyalty, individual loyalty. I believe first in loyalty to our core values, to the Constitution, to whatever our mission is and my team, and then loyalty to an individual in the context of all that. But to have loyalty to an individual independent of that, I think is where we start to get into a red zone type situation. So I don't know a whole lot more about discipleship. I've heard of it, it's kind of out there as anecdotal, but it's not anything that you find in Air Force regulations or documents.
Yeah, I was definitely I saw it presented, and then that one was like listed. I was like, what's that? How am I going to take that? What is it? And, you're talking about the idea of someone being taken under their wing. So that happens all the time, right? That's at the purest form, that is mentorship. So I understand that. But like the fact that is listed as a distinct other ship, like, well, that's kind of interesting. Like, what are you saying as far as what are we saying as the Air Force? If it's listed in the handbook like that, like, what does that mean? And so I agree with you that there's some, there are some dangers in there when we start talking.
That's something where, again, because it's anecdotal.
Yeah, exactly. It's the anecdotal level of it. Like, whoa. When you say stuff like that, you got to finish your sentence. What are you actually saying right now? Because you could potentially be starting or establishing a precedent that has a connotation you did not mean. And so, and like most, words have meaning, but like discipleship could have, if I take it for the extreme most, I'm just going to do it regardless without even thinking. I'm a disciple of a leader and I'm going to do whatever they say. I'm going to make sure that they place some trust in me. I'm going to do whatever it takes in order to make sure that I succeed. That way I do not ruin this opportunity or, be a failure in his or her eyes. So that can be very egregious. We're talking about like where you start making, writing check your body can't cash. Like this is not, you know better than that. But for whatever reason, you have this external pressure of being a disciple. That means like, no, I have to fail. I have to succeed no matter what. Potentially at the expense of at somebody else's career, the expense of my marriage, my relationships that I have with other people. Like I highly am confident that is not what the Air Force meant as far as when they started talking about discipleship.
Right. Yeah. Spot on. So it's not something I'm advocating for, that should be a way of career progression. But I do think it has been a reality for some people in the past.
So the fact that you and I basically agree that's kind of awkward. And if I was going to, I would like a good officer, I'm not going to just be a problem admirer. I'm going to bring a recommendation to solution. So here's the other ship I'd rather replace it. So we already talked about mentorship. We talked about relationship. We talked about sponsorship. I think the fourth ship should be championship. That's right. Championship. The reason why I say, so what is our Air Force mission? To fly, fight, and win. Fly, fight, and win anytime, anywhere. So if we're going to be winning, we need to get championships. But you know how you get championships? To work as a team. Teams win championships. That's what's going to happen when you go out there. And I really think that's better, if I was in charge of this handbook magically, maybe I will, who knows? I was remixing the four ships. I do like mentorship, relationship, and sponsorship. I think those are valid ships. Championship though elevates it to where like this is a team sport. This is something that like you need to think about something above you. It's not your individual performance. You're contributing to the team. Being Air Force, we need to win. And so when you start kind of developing your mindset that you need to have a championship mentality, that you have a certain position. Not everybody can be quarterback, not everybody commander, not everybody can be point guard, not everybody can be forward or striker, but that position is damn important in the bigger picture of something. So if you execute your job the best you can, guess what's going to happen? Banners in the rafter. So championships is what I propose would be I would replace discipleship with championships.
Yeah, I love it. I hadn't heard of it, but I love it. Champions, you got to earn it, right? So That's the first step. You got to earn it, and that's part of being a team. And then that team elevates everybody on the team from within, from in that community. And then on top of that, then when we win, we celebrate, and we celebrate each other's winners, and we inspire more champions. We got to inspire others, and so part of that is celebrating. If we can't celebrate the win because the way we won isn't something that gives off the perception of being earned, then we can't inspire others in the process. So I think that earning piece is really important. And it reminds me of a PACE seminar that I was part of maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where we sat in auditoriums, about 300 of us, and PACE is Profession of Arms Center of Excellence for the Air Force. And so they do some great exercises, but they did a rock, paper, scissors, and they had everybody stand up, and you pair up with someone, and you do rock, paper, scissors. And whoever wins finds someone else who won, and you do it. And whoever lost finds somebody and starts cheering and clapping them on. And by the end of this exercise, you only have one winner, or one winner at the end of it all. And everybody else is cheering that winner on. And I think it's really critical what you said there about the championship. And we got to be able to celebrate and cheer our winners within the community and keep moving.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I think I might do that exercise tomorrow morning when I'm coaching at Revival Fitness, but that's beside the point. That's I like that idea of, I want to try that out. So yeah, I just really think that like when you're striving towards a team and you're going towards a group goal, that's what the Air Force does. We should be striving for group goals. That's not the expense of individual things. I'm not trying to say the individual doesn't matter, and neither are you, I don't think. But the bigger picture of why we serve. Why do we serve? To protect the men and women standing beside us, the men and women who and our kids that are back home. That's why we put on the uniform, and that's the most important thing. So, but the idea of being proud, when you're proud of something you've achieved as a team, you know all the hard work and toil and sacrifice that went into that championship. You're damn proud as why, as a team, we succeeded for something. And so that could be something that be really taken as a positive note. And everybody who doesn't want to win a championship, what do we talk about? You know, maybe as Americans, we just inherently, I'm not playing for funsies, I'm playing to freaking win. And so let's do this. And so if our mission is fly, fight, and win, I think if I was king for a day, I was able to change those 4 ships in the handbook for mentorship, that's what I would do. It would be mentorship, relationship, sponsorship, and championships. I would have rings. I would actually have a belt. I definitely would have a belt walking around if I was a champion. So DB, thank you for joining me this week. This is definitely something, we were talking a little bit before I hit record. I pick my guests because I find guests that are very passionate about the subject they want to talk about. I told you it was going to be easy breezy, just kind of talking about this. And so, but yeah, thank you for a lot of the mentorship, like I said, that you've been providing not only to myself, to the rest of the MAFO community and around the Air Force. Again, the fact that you took 300 pictures at the AFA conference is a testament to people know you and recognize you as a leader, and they want to continue to be inspired by you. So I'll leave you with any final comments you'd like to have for the Constant Elevation podcast audience.
Yeah, hey, thanks for inviting me once again. This is fantastic what you're doing to provide a forum for us to elevate. Constant elevation, right? That is what it's all about. A rising tide lifts all boats. And so you're doing that. We're sharing knowledge, and that's going to lift all boats. That helps us to create a better Air Force for our future generations to continue to defend the nation. And if we keep paying it forward, if we're selfless about that, if we're cheering other people on, then for me, that's a success.
Awesome. I completely agree. So DB, again, thank you for your time tonight. I'll let you go so we can enjoy the rest of our time with our families. For the Constant Elevation podcast, we will talk to you next week. Peace.